If a city doesn't have a vibrant downtown and people care about downtown, it doesn't have a heart.
It's hard to imagine having all this downtown without this wonderful green space and garden right in the center.
I'm a big believer in gardens and public gardens, how they can really transform not only a city, but transform people.
This is a significant piece of property and land. Looking towards the skyline is a beautiful sight.
To have 17 acres in the middle of downtown is a wonderful thing to start with.
Well, in the 50s, downtown Oklahoma City was beginning to get shabby. And then nationally, retail was moving out of downtowns.
People moved away from downtown. They physically moved their housing to the outskirts of town, so they didn't come downtown for shopping, and downtown changed completely.
And so the next thought was, well, let's get a plan. Then we can sell the idea.
Dean McGee's vision for the place was a beautiful park-like setting.
And my job from almost the beginning was to be the deputy.
Dean McGee was the father of it all, and should always have our love and respect for what he did.
I see Dean McGee as the grandfather of the gardens, but Jim Talbot is the father of the gardens. He is the guy that absolutely, he put his heart and soul into this project, and it's why it's here today. Without him, it would not be here.
I think there were 6 or 7 men who went to Copenhagen to see the Tivoli Gardens, and that group was led by Dean McGee.
They went to Tivoli and saw what it was like to have a park in the center of the city that was more than a park.
Dean McGee felt that every major city had to have a park.
Well, these men came back with ideas they gleaned. People put their heads together, and we came up with the idea of putting a botanical garden in the middle of the city.
They really were inspired. And McGee came back determined to carry this forward. He set aside 6 square blocks for a major park.
Back in the early 70s, when this thing came about, it was a result of a design competition. Firms came in from all over the world and submitted proposals, etc.
And the original plan called for 2 bridges that were designed by Conklin Rosan out of New York City.
They turned a glass tube on its side and spanned a pond.
He had an idea for something slick and glassy to be out here in the rolling prairie.
Well, the Crystal Bridge is an icon for the city. It's probably one of the most unique shaped conservatories that I've ever seen in the world.
They came up with the concept of the interior of the Crystal Bridge being 3 different microclimates.
It was a waterfall idea in the south end, and then we went through the middle of it and it got you to the north end where we have desert.
The project was started in 1972 as far as construction, but during all of the next ensuing period of time, it appeared to the public to be an inaccessible hole in the ground.
That hole in the ground. That's what everybody called it, pretty much.
There was a lot of laughter about the Myriad Gardens.
A lot of politicians ran against it when they'd run for office, and then they'd immediately flip around and say, hey, what a great idea, I'm all for this.
And it began to develop a really serious negative reputation in the community as a money pit.
The gardens proceeded slowly, and too slowly for some of us.
Well, then 82 came along and things went to hell in a handbasket. Penn Square Bank, the oil industry just collapsed. Downtown Oklahoma City was hanging on by its fingernails.
Well, McGee decided that we had to get this deal done. And so he formed the Myriad Gardens Foundation with the vision that they would raise the money privately to build the Crystal Bridge. Unfortunately, most of those people were the kind of people that were customers of Penn Square Bank.
Everything collapsed. We only had enough money to build the support beam for the Crystal Bridge itself.
I think there were some of us who were never going to let it not happen. I promise you.
McGee, as head of the foundation, turned to Lee Allen Smith, who was the traditional money raiser in Oklahoma City, and said, Leon, let's do it like we always did it.
The economy kind of cratered for a while. So this was a great experience to get that $1.3 million raise, because it gave Oklahomans and their citizens a little boost, a little spirit, a little bump in their get along by having something good like this happen in their city.
The opening of the Crystal Bridge, we didn't know if anybody was going to show up. But what I most remember is that when we were about ready to open, we went to the glass doors, and there were hundreds of people waiting for the doors to open. I mean, hundreds, maybe thousands. And when we opened the door, they all went, yay! They'd been waiting for it. So it really did have a group of supporters. That was a great moment.
And people began to build positive feelings from that moment on.
One of the most endearing things about those early years was being able to work with Mr. McGee. Got to work with some incredible people, but he ranks at the top.
It was his dream. He was very reserved. He wasn't in great health at that point in time, and he'd been waiting a long time for it, so I think he was happy about it.
But he was so excited about the fact that we're there, and we'd gotten to this point.
We did open the Crystal Bridge in 1988, but the outside gardens really were just a basic park at that time.
The Crystal Bridge was the main attraction, and the outside gardens, early on there were no trees in the garden virtually.
Our constant concern was we had not really finished this.
There were no entrances that you could see if you stood on the street corners. It was protected by big berms. In my mind's eye, I knew the botanical tube was here. But they said you can't see it because the berms totally covered it.
So when Larry decided to build a new tower, and the site was selected directly opposite the gardens, he wanted to realize the potential of the Myriad Gardens. He wanted the Myriad Gardens fixed, in his phrase, before the opening of the Devon Tower.
We would use the tax dollars generated by Devon and have them be dedicated to redoing the Myriad Gardens and as many streets and sidewalks and other parks as we could fit in around the city.
Larry Nichols is the man, and we all owe him a debt of gratitude to see that it's going to continue to prosper.
If you go to a city and it looks prosperous and is active with people, making the city look nice has a big impact. This is a unique facility. This is both a botanical garden and a public park.
We have many features here in the new design that definitely have an urban park mission. And that would be our band shell, our great lawn, our dog park, places just for people to come and enjoy or be active.
In the Crystal Bridge, there were plants from almost every continent. It's a beautiful space with plants that kind of sequentially bloom all year round.
When you visit a botanical garden, it's a wonderful opportunity. It's a unique place where you can really slow down, relax, be in a place of beauty, of calm.
Perhaps the most used part of the gardens in terms of the general public, the children's garden.
The ultimate test is whether or not the people come. If kids come to play in it time and time again, you know it's a success.
It's great to have the garden to be just for aesthetic purposes, to be beautiful, an oasis in the city. But our core mission, too, is education, teaching people about plants and gardening and why they're so important in our lives.
Myriad Gardens is fantastic, what it's turned into. It truly is a jewel.
It's happened. But what's really happened is it's now a colossal center of activity.
As active as it is with restaurants and music and art and theater here, it makes it a part of the cultural scene.
It's the best feeling in the world to come down here in the evening and see people on the lawn and enjoying themselves. It's like the living room for the community.
It's amazing, it's phenomenal, it's exciting, and it's just beginning.
It's the city's front yard, backyard. It's their playground. And the Myriad Gardens is in the heart of the city.
I think McGee would just dance. He would be so pleased with what's happened.
I think everyone needs to have some nature, some trees, some grass in their life. I can't imagine not having it.